With that, I would like to bring about the last speaker, and again, it was his term that I used, people first, to sort of for our sessions, many of the sessions. He's been a great friend and a mentor, as well as an industry colleague. Hutton Henry, who is the CEO of Beyond M&A, and the thing that he's going to talk about is what is the biggest threat to happiness in or at workplace. So ladies and gentlemen, let's bring on Hutton Henry. You're on mute.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you, Anirban. It's been a great day. Thank you. And I appreciate it's the end of the day and we're all tired. So I'll try and keep this nice and short. So I'll put my timer on. And as I'm doing that, I just wanted to acknowledge a few of the things that I learned today. Guyan, around everyone being a freelancer and an entrepreneur. And Shrewd, I love the idea of community and breaking bread. Helped me mature some of my offerings. So before I start, I wonder if you could play a little game with me and pretend that you are a movie director. And in the chat box, what I'd love you to do is you've got a blockbuster coming out in a year's time, but your main actor has decided to leave. And so suddenly you need to find a new person. And the part that they're playing is a scientist. So what I'd like you to do, if you can, in the chat window, is just sort of knock up some words around what do they look like, who maybe they are, the kind of characteristics, anything you can do. And I'll give it a few seconds and half a minute to do that. I'm not sure if I can see the 1 second. The chat box itself. Anirban, can you see any answers in there coming in? Okay, here we go.
Sorry, not yet. I was on mute. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, for the benefit of the viewers, if you could just repeat the question one more time. So
yeah, sure. So you're a movie director, and you're about to do a blockbuster, and the main character or the main actor has left, and you have to cast somebody else. What I'd love to find out from you is whether you, what that sort of person would be like. Who would you cast? What would they look like? What would they act like? And just maybe characteristics or names, or I'll just take a quick drink. Okay, for the interest of time, I'm not going to read any out. I think, here we go. Empathetic, very good. Like a learned person, excellent. Well, I'm wondering if that person would look anything like this. Someone smart, of a certain type, right? You know, pretty young, intelligent, Caucasian. And why didn't we think of someone like this as a scientist? So Stephen Hawkins or Marie Curie, we have very amazing scientists in the world. And before I go into that, I wanted to explain who I am. As Anirban kindly explained, I'm the CEO of a business that deals with mergers and acquisition, technology integration. And I've got into this weird space over the last 15 years, specifically around tech team transformation. And some of the information I want to share today, it's not huge amounts of data, but it is all my data or my team's data as we've worked with people and seen the whites of their eyes and learned a few things. And one of the other key things is that I actually did 9 years learning to become a screenwriter. And that becomes this really weird thing that relates to the career and the services that we give today. So of the two things I want to talk about in terms of barriers of happiness, this first one is around bias. Now, of course, unconscious bias It's such a big thing now. There's even LinkedIn courses. And when there's a course on LinkedIn, you know it's old news in one way. But I wanted to explain my personal experience. So when I studied screenwriting, what I ended up doing was we ended up going to this amazing course, and we went into the cinema, purpose-built one at the British Film Institute, because I'm based in London, and we watched these blockbuster films or any different types, and every 2 to 3 seconds, they would stop the film and they would ask us, 30 or 40 of us, what did you see? And we would interpret it from all different angles, depending on your societal upbringing, your ethnicity, your gender. And it was amazing to experience that. And as a screenwriter, you need to know how to push into those stereotypes. So what I didn't realize, because it wasn't even something we spoke about, was I was seeing unconscious bias being run in real time in front of me. And I will never forget those times. It was amazing. If I spoke about tech teams, by the way, I'm talking about stereotyping in teams in general. And what we tend to find, if you think about your stereotypical views of areas of commoditized skill sets, they tend to be seen as poor communicators. Yet everything we're trying to do to be successful in business is around communication and collaboration. And obviously some companies do exceptionally well there. And the irony around tech people in particular, but also other areas we've looked at within accounting, anywhere that there's lots of people of the same type, is that they're actually building things that are trying to help people communicate better. You'll get a copy of these slides if you'd like them. But so what we do is we basically look at 3 parts of the mind. And one thing I should explain is the purpose of our business, which you might be able to see here, is that we help people find opportunity during adverse periods of change. Now, we wrote that way before COVID, but how apt is that for today? And as part of that, we assess people as we assess technology. So we look at the two. And I'm the author of the book, People First. I want to look at things from a people perspective before I look at the tech. And the 3 areas we look at is the cognitive, the affective, and the conative. The top 2 you're probably well versed with. Well, I'm sure you are, considering our audience here. So cognitive is all around 1 and 1 equals 2. What can you do within this job? And the affective is really how we look at people in terms of their cultural fit. And the conative is really this part around your doing, the drive and necessity. And the way that I like to explain it is that it's really about how you deal with stress. It's the first thing you do when you hit a stressful environment or situation. And this is why I say the numbers are not huge, but they are people we've worked with 1-to-1. And over 2 years, we've worked with 40 companies, startup, corporate, parts within a corporate, and we've assessed 339 people. And of that, 221 work directly in technology. And we found that 200 of that 221, so 90%, are exactly the same type cognitively. So when basically things go wrong or if there's stress, 90% of them will behave in the exact same way. And that exact same way is that they will look to the past and they will look for data. It's not exactly what companies want. They want innovation, they want growth, they want systemization. And a fact finder, which is what they will always look to the past, and something has to have existed in the past for them to build their future. Imagine telling that to Steve Jobs, who was probably a quick start. So these people tend to ad-lib. They tend to create new things that never existed before, and they only think of the future. Most small startup entrepreneurs tend to be this type, and I'm only showing them to you today as an example to compare to this 90%. So I wanted to show you a small example in terms of happiness here. This is a company we worked with in 2018, 44 people, And 88%, as you can see in the bottom left corner, when they are impacted by a stressful environment, they're going to go and be initiating through this fact finding. And I'm only touching this because really it's about finding our root cause. Why are we hiring in this way? And if we have the data, like we're just showing you, it's a way that we can now start to break up the enterprise. And so we could look at them and say, right, well, you're hiring clones. And from there, we looked at their hiring process and understood it was incredibly smart. It was very mechanized. They paid people, they're based in Silicon Valley, and they paid people to turn up for interviews. And on top of that, it also meant that a lot of people were ignored. So anyone that was slightly different or out of the norm just wasn't considered. So where is that coming from? Well, of course, it comes from the founder, and looking at his biases. He's got his own movie biases. So I'd say that that's a key aspect, because I know unconscious bias is a well-trodden path, but being able to show the data that you are being biased with your people is quite helpful to then be able to open it up and change it. I wanted to note as well this, what I think is a romantic notion of diversity. So the first piece is that it's great if you think about a project of any type, that you have the first stage of ideation. So having 50 people that think differently, or even 10, is a fantastic thing when you're coming up with a new idea, because you can come out and brainstorm in different ways. But in the middle section, when you're delivering, that's where we spend most of our money. And being different causes problems. Unless as leaders, we can manage the diversity and the differences, you'll tend to find there's issues there. And how do we get that through? And even the same with handover and maintenance. What is finished to you might not be same for me. So that's sort of as a base that we need to fix the unconscious bias piece. It's a very well-trodden path. But the bit I think is unique is really the real threat to your happiness. And if you would indulge me for a second, I would love it if you could connect, if you can connect to this website, polev.com, and enter Hutton Henry 334. And what I'd love, if you can, is to put in a word or a sentence as to what you think is your biggest threat to your happiness at work. And while you're doing that, I'll just give you a little bit of background, because obviously we're a bit of a strange tech company, and it all comes back from a small business, from the founder. So as I said, we try and help people find opportunity through adverse change. Or situations. And I thought it was really great that Sangrita mentioned the why question, and my, I think, would be, what adversity are you facing today? So, and part of the reason for that is that, unfortunately, when I was a kid, I lost my parents and went into foster care, and it didn't really work out too well. We might be getting some answers now. Okay, monos, yes, non-value, work added. Okay, great. So for me, there were some issues there. So for 13 years, I was somewhere that I didn't want to be. And, but luckily for me, I learned how to code on my own. So when I went out to the workforce, some people helped me get back in and build a fantastic career. So it's always been something of mine to pay it forward, to pay it back, if you like, and to help people, specifically in tech, because that's my experience. But some of the things I'm trying to show you today are actually relevant to companies and teams of different size. Ooh, micromanaging. Thank you. Non-value. I'll give that another 15 seconds. So for me, it's I found doing this work has been great, because I've tried employing young people, and that works really well. But the type of thing we're doing now, we can help, bigger numbers. And if you can fix people at the top, it often has an impact on the, a ripple effect down. So I'm kind of glad that, thank you very much for doing that. And I'm going to move on. So if you read the self-help books, slash business books, they'll tell you it's you. If you're not happy at work, and Arniban in the last on the panel was talking about happiness, which was great, and Pablo was talking about being grateful. But the thing is, right, there's so many. I think we're all really vulnerable when we're not happy, and it's quite easy to pick up a book to say you're the problem. And so in the fact, I found so many books with this same title of Get Out of Your Own Way. I ran out of space. It's a serious problem. And I had a business coach years ago who tried to present this issue to me, and there had to be something different. And I do believe in this, love yourself so that your life depends on it. So because I work mostly for private equity, I can't walk in and say, look, I'm going to make everyone happy at work. It's just not going to make it happen. They need to see ROI, something on the P&L, some kind of impact. So of course, the best thing to do is to increase productivity at work. So I Googled it, and this is the top article that came up. Basically I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest. It's the top in Google. It will get way further than I could do in terms of SEO. But you will see from those 8 suggestions, they're quite focused on the self, not on the workplace. And I think they're quite work 101. So I feel that, A, the problem is not you. B, the solutions that we often see are not correct. And in that same article, they said, it's quite a long article, get rid of you. If you don't like your job, just start a new company and just start something you love. And it made me laugh. I mean, it's quite disappointed, but it made me laugh because, as you might know this quote, entrepreneurs are the crazy people who give up working for someone else for 40 hours to work for themselves for 80 hours. And I would put a little bracket underneath saying, for more stress and less money. But yeah, I'm probably putting a funny piece on this, but the key thing is I believe from what we know now from working with those people, that it's very, very simple. And we saw micromanagement and non-valued work and everything come up from everyone there. But I see it's all to do with a circle and a line. So imagine that's you. And this outer circle directly next to you, that's your natural skills or your natural ability under stress. And this outside circle is your expectations of yourself and how they match your natural abilities. If they're out of kilter, you've got a problem. And this line, well, it's this. So this is a real team we worked with years ago, company of 1,000 or so people, growing by 25%. So outside of the tech world, this is a senior management team. And you can see the COO in the middle, her green circle, that's her perfect natural skills. And then her own expectations of a job on herself are amber. That's an issue. And obviously I'm highly simplifying this for this presentation, but you can see the red lines going to other people. And that's her expectations onto other staff. What does she expect of them? So this is really about examining our expectations of others. And I know today that quite a few times we talked about relationships, but the things we tend to think about our affective relationships, how do we get on with people? But we don't often talk about our ability relationships. I mean, we might have job descriptions, 2 or 3 pages of A4, but they don't normally match the job you end up doing, as many people have noted today. But this is a live view of everyone in your team. And if this is your senior management team of 1,000 people, Imagine the ripple down effect on this. The head of client services on both sides on the left are totally misaligned with their job. And in fact, when we worked with them, we realized that they had to do a lot of work of talking to people and doing quite dynamic entrepreneurial things, but their inner sort of abilities were much more aligned to quieter work and much more analytical work. So this is not personality driven assessments. This is working out what work suits their stress ability. So in effect, there's a spelling mistake I've just realized. The biggest threat to your happiness at work is your expectations. Number one, the expectations of yourself, and number two, the expectations that's coming inwards from your line manager, boss, entrepreneur, whoever you work for. And of course, there's a key word here, which is your mismatch of expectations. So I'm keeping it quite light. It's the end of the day. I did that on purpose. But first of all, what we need to do in this well-trodden world of unconscious bias is work out a way to surface those biases that are impersonal. It's got to be data-driven. And if you can do that, then you can start talking to people around the ways that they hire or fire, let go. And then the second aspect is all around these mismatch of expectations. So what can you do? Well, the first thing, obviously we can normally do a workshop in person, but I've really put it down to three things. So number one, can you think about your movie biases? Even when you watch a movie, just watch how your brain processes things quickly. I studied semiotics as well, the study of science, just how we take in images. It's an amazing thing to do. I'm not asking you to study, but can we look at the way that we're looking at stereotypes and the bias in hiring? And to be fair, with the audience we have today, you're probably well ahead on that journey. Number two, though, is surface and examine your expectations of each other. And number three, really something I'm really passionate about is architecting the team before the transformation. I've kept it just over 20 minutes. So in terms of contact stuff, there's a couple of things here. There's my contact details there. We got number two there is a free graphic novel that I've recently released. Doesn't cost anything, but talks about this from a founder's point of view, from somebody that's multi-generational at the old, towards the end of their career, and a young person's point of view. And I would highly, highly recommend reading the book Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. I don't think it was intentionally written about diversity, but when you read it, you understand how amazing it was to build a company that had never been built before by people who had never done the things they did before. No one knew how to design trainers or run accounts, and there were a motley crew that he had to manage in this strange way, and he tells it all. It's brilliant. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to your questions. So thank you.
Yeah, let's get some questions here. I see one question that has come up, which is essentially you explained the CEO or team. So the question pertains to that. If you could give a couple of examples where it has worked, where it has been a real sort of well-functioning team, leadership team, and that's created a happy environment. So if you could give an example.
So do we mean prior to doing the work or doing the work?
Yeah, doing the work.
Okay. So that team in particular, so number one, I've never seen a leader have so much respect from her middle-aged managers, right? So you walk in and everyone put everything down, all their electronic devices, everything went down to one side, and they came in fully present for their boss. And in that list, I'll be honest, every single team we look at have those types of colors. We've never ever seen a very high amount of green. So it's about looking at those discrepancies. And what we ended up having to look at was reallocating some of the work. So and what you end up doing is they do the work, as I'm sure many people here would see that, is all you're doing is surfacing the issues, and they can talk about it in an impersonal way that's not finger pointing. And then what they've ended up doing is either reallocating the work. The other thing, obviously, is to bring other people from the next layer down to fill the gaps. There's other areas of looking at it. And then the last thing, unfortunately, is they had to let one of the key people go. And because that was such a pivotal role, then that was creating issues within finance. So the impact is that team bonds better because they have the same language and awareness, and then they manage the next layer down in a happier space. I would say as well, for every piece of work that we've done, as I'm sure most practitioners would say, is right now we're often talking to people who are thinking leading edge. So they're already thinking, I need to make people happier. It's the ones that don't think like that really, they wouldn't probably be here. And that's the real nut to crack, really.
Excellent. I will ask another question, which is kind of extending on that. And we've spoken about it a few times. So there is this entire pretext, which is kind of governing the corporate world. Majority of the places where we see that, while there is adoption of concepts like Gallup and MBTI is being sort of adopted, but still the adoption levels are still very, very low. Most of the organizations are still driven by other tangible drivers. What do you think are the reasons why, what you just mentioned about cognitive biases, why people are not adopting these techniques, methods to create a more congenial, more harmonious teams?
I think it's the problem is that providers find it very hard to present an ROI. So that's the thing that we've been able to develop over time is, if you asked me 2 years ago, I'd be scratching my non-existing hair. We were having, they were like, I love the idea of this, but where's my ROI? How can you attach this to productivity? So that's the thing that the Gallup and the big companies obviously doing a very good job. I mean, Gallup's the #1 worldwide. And you can take them, or you can take GLH, if you know them. They're the guys who do one-to-one, like heavy duty psychoanalysis. And so for the people who are open to this, then it's great. You're speaking to the converted, but as you're rightly saying, there's probably 80-90% who are not interested. And, they need to see, the message has to be presented to them in the way that they understand. So we couldn't have a people piece. And I mentioned my book, People First. And 2 years ago, I used to pitch very, very heavily on the people aspect before we got into the rest of our business. And I realized this was after a few failed pitches, I realized that even though I think it's a people first approach, I actually have to mention it right at the end. It has to be fully integrated, and it mustn't be presented on its own. And I've also, if it helps, I also set up a company just to do this, and we struggled on that business because it needs to be integrated with a service and an outcome and an ROI.
Excellent. I think that's a very, very good way of putting it. I don't see any other questions or chat. So with that, I would like to thank you, Hutton, for sharing your wisdom and insights.
Yeah, thanks so much. And also, just one last thing, it's been a really great event, but it did make me think about acknowledging the people who can't work because of COVID today. We're talking about how to make things better for people in work. There's a huge number, I guess, that are affected. But it's been a great event. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Hutton. And I think you've also given me the cue to sort of also end the program. Essentially, since morning, we've been talking about different aspects. We had diversity of idea from across the globe. We had people coming from different industry background, practitioners, decision makers, consultants, thought leaders. We also had a diversity of geography. So we had people joining us all the way from Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Bangladesh, India, also from Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, from Eastern Europe, Netherlands, UK, but also from the US and Canada. But what it showed us is that while there is an acknowledgement of employee well-being being one of the important parts, there is still a lot that needs to be covered. I think one of the biggest questions that are still unanswered at this stage, irrespective of all the so-called employee well-being programs, is the question that Hutton put right at the end, which is the ROI. Which is why we had started working on this topic, which is future at work, employee well-being, or an empty promise. So while we acknowledge that there is a movement towards the employee well-being, I would still say there is a huge long distance that we have to cover before we truly convert the world to start converging on employee well-being. Right now, it seems to be a lot more about an empty promise. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure to have all of you today join us since the morning European time till now. I've personally enjoyed it, and I would also like to thank Devyani Sen, who's been the real sort of workhorse getting this thing together. In the past, majority of the events, I was doing a large part of the work, but this time it was primarily her initiative. I would also like to thank Simeon Radev. You've been rock solid. You've started helping us out a few weeks back, but you've quickly gotten speed and helped us out. Ariana Lee, who has been also providing input, as well as many of the other speakers and panelists with whom we've had conversations. And last but not least, I would also like to thank Markets and Partners, whose office we have used to host this show. And with that, I would like to announce that we will be conducting our next event, which is on October 22nd. And the topic is, again, a very interesting one, which is how to leverage technology to create a social impact. Another topic which is talked about quite a lot, but not a lot is happening in that space yet. We will get, again, experts like the ones that you saw today. We'll try and get experts again on 22nd of October. And till then, we have released our magazine, which is insightism.io. It is available on our website. We have also created a website for the magazine. It is insightism.io, insight and then ism.io. It's available. It's online. All the articles, perspectives shared by our speakers, panelists, and contributors are there. And if you haven't started following us, then do follow us on our LinkedIn company page. We post all our information over there with the magazine, as well as with the speakers and the upcoming event. And then we also have new channels, YouTube, Instagram, that we have created. We also have Facebook, which is where we share some of our information. So with that, I would wish you have a very, very good day. Have a very good rest of the week, and yeah, see you on the 22nd of October. Till then, bye bye.